And we're back downstairs at the bench working on some stuff. And as always, brought to you by 3 Monkeys Solderless, home of the world's best cables for your pedal board, as well as like your home stereo or car stereo, right? RCAs. We got the DCs, we got the 1/4-inch patch cables. Here's one right here. You just screw them on. They got the handy dandy little notch there so you can fold it at a 90-degree angle, 45-degree perpendicular angle, and you could stick it in your pedal, and then you're not going to have a lot of wasted space between your pedals. You just use your box cutter, cut them, and then you're off and running. Screw it on, be done with it. All right, so what are we building this time? Well, we're going to start with this, and it's going to be a Jose, a 50-watt Jose amplifier. I think we've seen like how you build these before, right? So I have like this master template for drilling. Goes on some G10 FR4 that I have cut to sizes. I double stick tape it on and I drill through our template. We end up with something like this, right? And I get out my bag of turrets, right? These little guys here. And then you put them in said hole and then use a tool to flare out the base so that they stay in place. So what we have here is a finished version of the board. And that's where I usually start with building one of these amplifiers, because this kind of tells you everything that you need to know in terms of positioning of things when you're going to start modifying a chassis to make it into a Jose amp. So that would bring us to, we got our pink drink here. So let me get a swig of that. Gotta have that. So once we have the board ready to go, we're gonna grab our chassis. So here we have a nice 50-watt Marshall style chassis, right? Galvanized steel, nice and sturdy, pretty much just like you would find. And we have to modify this a little bit so that we can use the circuit. We can build a Jose circuit into it. So what we need to do is we need to put another preamp tube here. So this will be for the extra gain stage that we're going to be using, or to make up for the extra gain stage that we're using. This one will actually be the gain stage. This will be stock V1 AB. This will be the cathode follower. This will be the phase inverter, your 2 octals, 3 filter cans, your filter choke. You got your output transformer, you got your power transformer, and at the front you have your complement of your layout. And we need to modify this as well for our jump switch, which would be over here. All right, so we could start with kind of working on the chassis a little bit. So let me get the panel. All right, so this is our front panel that we're going to use. We'll get some of the parts so that we can line it up appropriately. All right, get our rocker switches and some jacks. And then we can kind of lay out where the switch is going to be. And then drill for it, right? Mark and drill. So I'm just going to kind of insert these a little bit, not all the way, so I can pull them out easy. Then we're going to take our jack here and get it up through there and get it going. Just put another one in just for good measure. And we'll be using the probably using the chrome jack for this. Or I won't be using the plastic ring jack, so it'll be sort of like the older style cliff jacks. All right, so now we need to put in our little double pole, double throw for the jump switch. So I like to put it like right around here. So that's it, that little guy right there. So I'm gonna get my drill. Load it up, and then go ahead and carefully go ahead and that's good right there. Okay. I'm gonna get a slightly larger one. This bit seems to have wandered a tiny bit. I think the head of it is getting a little bit dull, not a big deal. We'll just use another bit here and go through. Okay, there we go. So now we're all marked up. We can take out our parts here and take the panel off. And there we have our mark for where we want the switch itself to be located. So now we can just go ahead and drill through here. Okay, that's given us a good point for our pilot. We're going to be doing the majority of this work. We're going to kind of mark where we want things, but we're going to be doing the majority of this work on the drill press because the hand drill is not really what you want to be using. All right, so now we're going to mark out for the tube socket. So I'm going to get some masking tape out. You don't really need to do this much, but I find that it offers a little bit of protection for the chassis itself. I'm going to grab a pen, ruler, and a square. So what we're first going to do is we're going to identify sort of the middle line of the tubes. All right, so that's bisecting them. And we can measure between the centers. So I'm basically using the 4 as my center line, and then I'm gonna go outside of each, the 3 and the 5, till they sit in the middle of each one of these sockets, and then I know that this is equidistant between the two. Actually, this is the wrong socket, red socket. Wrong square. I need to use my framer square, right? Because I want to, at this point, put in the line that the holes that attach the tube socket will go into. So this will be where we want to have our extra preamp tube. So I'm going to pilot it, hole it a little bit. That's good. That'll give us a good point for a bit to grab onto downstairs when we start drilling. So for the real thing. So to make the hole, I think we've gone over this before. I like to use a unibit to drill it out. So this is basically a unibit right here, and it's a stepped drill bit. So as you go through, it cuts for every step down a larger hole, and it makes a nice round hole. If you were to use like a big drill bit, it would create, probably unless you had a very rigid setup, it would create a mess and an oval hole, more than likely, as well as it would probably, you know, try to kill you. A punch is a good way of doing things, like using like a Greenlee punch or something like that, where you drill a pilot hole and then you would have a cutting head that you would ratchet to kind of work its way into the metal and then punch out this hole like this. I mean, looking at these, I could tell, right, these are cut with a laser, more than likely, because you could see the heat kind of signature of the metal getting hot as the laser comes through and cuts everything. And that's probably the easiest way to do it, but you know, you got to have a laser, and I ain't got no freaking laser, man. So we're not doing it that way. So then we have our back panel, right, which has a variety of holes on it for doing different kinds of things. We're going to be just using this guy right here for our presence control, and we're going to eliminate these over here. So this will be our presence, our fuses, this will be empty. This will be our impedance selector, and these will be our 2 speaker jacks. So there we have that. So now I'm going to go down to the drill press. And when I come back, this will be ready. And then we can follow up. We can continue on, and we can kind of put the board in where it needs to be. And I'll usually just put that in on the top, lining it up like here to where I think it needs to be. And then I'll mark the 4 holes, and then I can just mount it from the other side, because these are, you know, all in the same place. So not a problem there. All right, so let me go down and drill this hole out and this hole out, and we'll see you in a minute. All right, so we're back from the drill press. We have most of the the no-hole socket, the 9-pin done. We have our switch hole ready to go. So now we have to create the 2 holes that allow us to fasten the socket. And we're using this 45-degree angle that we put in as the, sometimes it could be a pain because you use a little cutting oil. And pens don't like to really kind of draw on oily substances. So we'll use the Sharpie instead of our pen. So those are our 2 sort of spots right there that we want to drill out to attach our socket. So I'm going to grab the drill. And these we could just kind of like drill straight through right here. I don't think there's much of a reason not to. We just have to make sure not to get this bit to walk. So you gotta kind of start really slow until you get a little bit of a thing going. So we drill all the way through. Okay, so this is a smaller size. I mean, usually I like to use an even smaller bit than this, but it seems like that other bit, the tip is finally gone, so we can't really depend on it not to walk all over the chassis. Okay, now we can go ahead and wind that out. So I'm going to grab another bit. I'm going to grab an 1/8 bit here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a little bit from this side. I'm going to drill a little bit. All right. We'll flip her over. Now we're going to come through on this side. Vacuum it out. Now we could take the tape off. And the reason for drilling from both sides is it kind of lessens the chances of a big nasty burr or punch out through the metal, which then you have to kind of, you know, use another bit to kind of remove, or a deburring tool or something like that. So here we have the next socket in there. It has a little bit of tape residue here, which we're going to clean off before we even assemble this. Once we're finished with the metal working on this thing, we're going to basically give it a really good wash with some mineral spirits, some naphtha, which will degrease the chassis, which is something I think is important to do. Helps with, you know, making sure that all your ground connections are good, you know, that you don't have any debris in the chassis, you know, and that everything is nice and clean. A lot of chassis, in a sense, will have, you know, machining oil left on them from the process of going through a factory, when factories can be pretty dirty. So you kind of want to have that. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I want to install my board. So I'm going to take my template for this. All right, so the template allows me to lay it down on either side. So in this case, here's our preamp side, and here's sort of like where that side, the power amp side, is, as I like to say. So I'm basically going to line this up where I want it, where it's not going to interfere with a lot of different things. Okay, I'm going to get some tape. Should put down the tape first. That's okay. We can do that right now because we sort of want to know where the tape goes to. Put a little fold on the tape, make it easy to get off again. So it looks like somewhere around here is right. So there's been more, I mean, I guess since this is like a Jose thing, we can talk a little bit about the Van Halen thing a little bit, I suppose. So there's some stuff about that was released, some stuff that was released with the Tone Chaser interviews from Steve Rosen. So he's talking about some things, and I thought there was some interesting stuff in there, especially about, you know, Ed playing bass on some of these albums. And you could definitely tell, I mean, I think I've talked about that before, that you can definitely tell that, you know, which albums he kind of played bass on, because, you know, everybody has their own sort of touch and sound. And, you know, that is the hands part, right? The groove part, the way that the velocity that a person is able to hit the strings at, it all is like a characteristic of that individual's abilities, or their just propensities or proclivities for doing things, the way that their hands are built, you know, everything about them that's natural to them will create sort of, you know, some of the dynamics and some of the feel of the sound. So, you know, I think there's like on Van Halen 1 and 2, I could definitely see that, you know, Michael Anthony had played on those records. And the thing that I always thought was the most obvious, or that sort of was like, wow, this has got to be the case, would be Fair Warning, and particularly like Dirty Movies, right? And I think they actually had talked about that, which was sort of surprising to be on that same sort of channel, in a sense. Just grabbing a tool here, that, you know, that sort of harmonic tapping part and the feel of the bass on that album, to me, the timing of it is all Ed. That's really, to me, that's what, you know, was very unique about him as well. I mean, he had a very unique timing to him. In some ways, he was extraordinarily precise, like a music box almost. The way he would pick things, you know, the timing between the picks, all of it was extremely precise and very practiced, very skilled. But there was also a kind of looseness to it at the same time, a kind of swing to it that in places where it didn't need to be like, you know, like a machine is picking something, or there was some looseness to it. And that whole album's bass tones really, to me, sound like, you know, some of that was going on for sure. So I thought it was cool. They were kind of in kind of agreement that, yeah, he was probably playing bass on that. I don't think there was any like definite confirmation that those were the tracks, but I think it's pretty obvious. Now, in terms of like Michael Anthony, I think he's extremely, I'm going to put a bigger dot here. He's extremely important to the sound of that band, you know, or was. I mean, his voice was, you know, a really integral part of, you know, the uniqueness of that band. The harmonizations that they would do, it's almost like barbershop quartet-like. But Michael was clearly had the best voice in that band for a very long time. And I don't even know whether Sammy sang any better than Michael could have. I mean, it was kind of, I guess they didn't want to be a three-piece band like Cream, even though obviously they liked Cream. I guess they didn't want Michael to sing. I mean, there are boots with Michael Anthony singing like Beer Drinkers, Hellraisers, doing like ZZ Top tunes and things like that, which are really cool. But it's kind of weird. It's not weird, but it's just like an anomaly that he never sang a single never sang on a record. You know, had the lead. I think Eddie even had a lead on some of the later albums, right, where he sang a song all the way through. But it's like, why didn't Michael ever get a kind of a chance at that? Who knows? Interesting. All right, we're going to go through now. Tell you, steel is a lot tougher than aluminum. And it magnetizes pretty good. Okay. You can kind of see all the shards on the drill bit that are kind of sticking straight up. So this bit's magnetic right now. I mean, iron and steel are very interesting substances. Iron, I guess, is really what we're talking about. Steel is, you know, iron and nickel, some other things in there, carbons. But the magnetism of steel is interesting. So, or of iron, right? But steel, depending upon the steel, may not be magnetic. And how iron and steel in their magnetic forms are very much influenced by heat as to whether they will be magnetic or not. So the grain structures of the steel itself, how they all line up, right? All the different atoms line up, has a lot to do with, you know, whether they can display magnetic qualities to them. So that's something that I think is, you know, really interesting in terms of how the universe works. You know, there was it really just keeps on going forever, in a sense. Get off there. In terms of explanations, right? It's sort of like, well, like, oh, why does a magnet work? Well, the answer, I'm going to steal somebody's quote. And if you can spot the quote, you can write it in the comment section and you'll get extra bonus points. So, why is iron magnetic? The answer is, well, basically, it depends upon, this is the quote, it depends upon what you're willing to accept for an answer. So if you can sort of name the person who originally had said that, well, he may not be the first one that said it. I think he is. He's the only person I've seen say it that way. Because it's an onion. And it's an onion that's fractal. In the sense that every time you can only answer the question with another problem. You know, oh, it's because of the way that the atoms line up. Okay, well, why do they line up that way? And why does that create a force, right? Weak magnetic, strong magnetic force. What is at the root of these forces? It never ends. You never come to an answer. So it just depends upon when you get sick of the answer or where you've run out of the ability to explain it anymore, which is more likely. So you run out pretty quick of ability to explain anything before it comes to, well, we don't know. So most of this universe is completely unknown to us in terms of how it really functions. It is a complete mystery. And I think there's, I hate to say it, but I think there's kind of like a false confidence in what we consider to be exceptional minds. So people that we have been taught through popular culture and through secondhand experience, sometimes firsthand experience, are the most exceptional minds of our age. That, you know, that somehow they're like Superman in the sense that they're a man that can fly. Which we all know men can't fly, or mankind can't fly. So these people, let's say like someone like Einstein or Bohr or, you know, Heisinger or any of these people, it's kind of like we've put them into a category of Supermen where they understand everything and their minds are like omniscient. And it just isn't the case. You know, most of the stuff that really would be fundamentally changing to our understanding of the universe is beyond our grasp, I think. And when we put our confidence in people that really, the difference between a kind of smart person and an exceptionally smart person isn't really that much when you really think about it. There's still huge gaps. There's still huge, blind spots. There's a lot of unanswered questions. So it's, in a sense, it's like, I don't want to discourage people from being like, oh, you know, you have to doubt everything and being, you know, too much of a skeptic or a cynic in a sense. But I think in some ways you have to have a balance of cynicism, or it's not even cynicism, it's realism, right? Because cynicism would be kind of has a connotation of being nasty. Whereas this is like amazement. Right? We don't want to, we're not cynical, like, oh, you're not smart, you can't. No, it's, this universe is not only more interesting and more unimaginable than we imagine, it's more so than we are capable of imagining. So it's sort of not being able to know what you don't know and then saying, well, that doesn't really matter or exist. So you can get yourself in a lot of problems when you kind of think you got the answers to things. That's often where things go really bad. So, where are we on this? I'm just blabbing like a crazy person here. Ranting. So yeah, I mean, all right. So it's like, all right. So I always say that there's like, and people who know me probably have heard me say this. I think there's no such thing. Well, there's no such thing as really smart. It's just a different kind of stupid. So it's like stupid to me is defined in a way by the inability of a person to recognize the consequences of their actions. So you would have something that we would consider to be maybe a lesser intelligent character like Foghorn Leghorn, who in some ways is brilliant, but in other ways is a dummy. And Foghorn Leghorn walks around in the yard, in the barnyard, and he steps on a rake, and it comes up and it whacks him in the nose and breaks his beak. And he doesn't know, how many times has he done that? And he still doesn't figure out that stepping on the rake causes it, through different types of leverage forces, as well as his particular weight and the exact position of the rake that he's stepped on, causes it to come up and break his beak. That's the case. But then there are other people who are like, well, I'm not going to do that. But they're going to create something that only a few people on the planet can do. And that particular creation is going to wreak havoc on the planet and on mankind forever. And it's something that they didn't calculate when they were doing this amazing feat of physics, math, science to create something that they thought was an amazing sort of like display of their intellect, when it actually turned out to be nothing more than an enormous curse. All right, Unabomber off. All right, so we're going to continue on with this. So now I think is a time to give like, there's a little bit of a burr there. Ah, it came off. Let me see what else we got to do. We have to put in a few other things. Now we have to put in some grounds. Right, because I like to put a few grounds in for different things here and there. So I think we're going to put them here. All right, so I believe this would be one ground right here. All right, so we're going to use that for like a chassis ground. We're going to also need a HT, a high tension ground for the DC supply, right, for the rectifier. And we're going to need a ground for the filament lines. And we're also going to need to put in, right here, we're going to need to put in a this, right, a tag strip that we can put in. So I think we'll put it like that. Make sure it's not in the way of anything. And that tag strip will hold sort of the plate resistor, the cathode, and the coupling capacitor for the added gain stage. I think if you haven't seen what I'm building before, which I'm guessing if you've been here more than once, you probably have. It's sort of like a 50-watt copy of the amplifier that I have, which is an original Jose Arredondo modified 100-watt super lead. So I'm basically building it the same way that he did. On that particular amplifier. Whack. think we're pretty much where we need to be. Let's just look through everything. Yeah, I think we are. So now would be the time I'm going to take it and I'm going to degrease the whole chassis. So I think I'll do that. I think we've probably have enough for this particular video, and we're just going to go through and build the whole thing out, right? And then give it a demo, and then we're going to put it up on Reverb. So once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.